The Dershow.
There's no question that President Trump is pushing the limits of his power to the point where it conflicts with what judges think may be their power or what line prosecutors think may be their power. That's not a constitutional crisis because there's a way of resolving it. The way of resolving it is the president gets to decide executive decisions. And if you don't like it, you can take it to court. You can argue with it, you can protest, you can resign, and the president has to do it in a proper manner pursuant to statutes. Some of them require notice, some of them require due process, some of them require reasons. But in general, a president can fire a prosecutor if the president doesn't like the prosecutor. And of course, whenever a president's elected, they immediately fire or produce the resignation of all the U.S. attorneys. It's very rare that a U.S. attorney is held over from one administration to the other because everybody recognizes that the job of the U.S. attorney is, although obviously prosecutorial, it's also political. And why is it political? Because administrations have different priorities as to who they will prosecute, not necessarily which people they will prosecute, but which categories of crimes they'll give priorities to. As I've mentioned over and over again, the Bible, in the book of Deuteronomy, instructs judges and prosecutors, lo takir ponim, do not recognize faces. Do not prosecute people because of who they are, what party they belong to, what race they are, what gender they are, who they voted for, what they've said about people. No, only prosecute them based on the law and the facts of the case. But we also know that the blindfold is often taken off. The real statutes of justice, by which I mean those who actually administer justice rather than the statues that stand outside the courtrooms with their blindfolds on. So the reality is, of course, presidents have the power, and the question often is, have they exercised that power properly? I don't know enough about the Adams case to know whether or not the Adams prosecution was a legitimate one to begin with. I know both of his lawyers, who are both excellent lawyers, one of my former student, the other my lawyer. So I'm very close to the legal defense team of Mayor Adams, and of course they've never thought that this was a prosecutable case, a real case. They always thought it was a politicized case. But many people disagree, and others think even if it wasn't a good case, it shouldn't have been dismissed based on the quid pro quo of you come and help me enforce my immigration policy, and I'll let you off the hook. More important job of making sure that New York City doesn't, in effect, become a sanctuary city, because sanctuary cities are, of course, unconstitutional under the Supremacy Clause. You can't have a sanctuary state or a sanctuary city. You can't have any region of the United States that doesn't comply with federal law, and federal law includes immigration law and deportation law. Now, there is a constitutional doctrine as well that says the federal government cannot compel state officials to do their work for them. So the line is that the feds can't tell prosecutors in the state, you have to help us round up all these deportable people, but you can't get in the way and prevent them being deported. You can't be a literal sanctuary city. You can't give them sanctuary, though you don't have an obligation to cooperate in the effort to try to get them deported. It's a neat line, but it's an important line. If I were the judge, I would have rendered this decision within an hour of being told that the Justice Department wants to drop it, and I would have done it in a one-paragraph opinion without any aggravation, without any input from either side. I would have said there's no case in controversy. Both sides, there are only two sides. The prosecution is represented by the Justice Department, and the defense is represented by his lawyer. Both want the prosecution dropped. I'm out of the case. I have no jurisdiction. I don't even have to rule. The prosecution is dropped. The prosecutor dropped it. That's the end of the matter. I can't resurrect it. I'm not a super prosecutor. That's what the judge should have decided. Instead, the judge went through the whole rigmarole. He appointed a brilliant lawyer to be his advisor on this. The brilliant lawyer wrote a brief saying basically what I'm saying, and the judge ruled that way. But it took, I don't know what, more than a month. Wasted time, wasted effort, and there's no real issue there. So the judge was right. The judge was also right in saying, well, no, this was a tougher one. This is a tougher one. The prosecution did have a disagreement, a narrow disagreement. Both the prosecutor, the Justice Department, and the defense agreed the case should be dismissed. But the defense wanted it dismissed with prejudice, without any possibility of being restored. And the Justice Department wanted it dismissed without prejudice. So that is a case in controversy. I take it back. That part of it is a case in controversy. And the judge had to decide that. I think they decided it wrongly, although he's right that you don't want to have prosecutors holding things over mayors as a matter of policy. I think as a matter of constitutional law, I don't see the basis. He's not, after all, doesn't have a roaming delegation to do justice. If the prosecution wants the case dismissed without prejudice, that's the way it gets done. I don't think the judge really has a role to play. He might have a role a year down the line or 2 years down the line if the prosecutor then comes back and says, it was without prejudice, so we're going to go prosecute him. If the judge then feels that the prosecution was improper based on an improper quid pro quo, then I imagine the judge would have a role. It's an interesting case. Again, a case I would have taught were I teaching criminal law, criminal procedure at Harvard Law School, as I did over the past 50 previous years. And anything that's interesting enough to teach the law students is interesting enough to put on my show.